If you think talking about mental illness is scary, imagine what happens when we don't talk about it. Join the conversation. Visit letstalkstigma.org.
Hello, I'm Carl Shallahorn, board member for the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, and on behalf of the coalition, I'd like to welcome you to the 12th in our series of Facebook Live events, this time focusing on the state of stigma, mental wellness in the new year. The beginning of a new year is a time when many people, me included, have resolved to create a lifestyle that utilizes a variety of tools to create a healthier sense of well-being. And while for most, these changes are physical in nature, we cannot deny the need to pay attention to our mental and emotional needs as well. What research has shown is that our mental and physical selves are inextricably connected. If one part suffers, so does the other. And while it's important to develop our capabilities to the best of our ability, sometimes we need help. This help can come from a variety of sources, many of which can be learned from online tools, but also others come directly from professionals who specialize in a particular content area. In today's discussion, we're going to explore how it's possible to improve one's mental wellness with three experts who each have a unique perspective on this topic. Before I introduce our panelists, here are a couple of housekeeping rules. Our program is for 1 hour, and during this time, if you have a question or comment, please type it into the chat box and we'll respond accordingly. Today I'm joined first by Sawrie Becker. Sawrie is the Director of Development for Westminster Presbyterian Church in Buffalo, where she oversees the church's advancement efforts for giving and membership. Sawrie is also the owner of SBB Life Coaching and works with individuals and small business owners to achieve personal and business success. Throughout her life, Sawrie has been a dedicated community leader with a genuine commitment to empowering women. She has served as the Commissioner of Public Advocacy and Executive Director of the Commission on the Status of Women for Erie County, is a past president of the Junior League of Buffalo, the Tennessee Coaches Alliance, and the advisory board of the Women's Business Center at Canisius College. Sawrie holds a Bachelor's of Arts degree in psychology, a Master's of Science in Education and School Counseling, and has completed extensive coach-specific training. Sawrie resides in Snyder, New York, and is the proud mother of 3 sons and 6 beautiful grandchildren, and believes that by being intentional, creative, and proactive, anything is possible with hope, faith, and hard work. Next, we have Carlette Bradley. Carlette is a native of Buffalo and is the CEO of the Masterpiece Project, a professional and personal development consulting firm that equips purpose believers to pursue what makes them uncomfortable, the place where growth happens. Carlette is a published author, a certified executive coach and trainer, and is also the co-founder of the Girls Sport Foundation. She's an active leader in her community and at the Edison Street Community Church, where she was ordained as an elder in 2019. Carlette is also an advisory board member for the Erie County Commission for the Status of Women and enjoys challenging individuals of all ages to adopt new ways of thinking and to accept the truth about who they are destined to be. Masterpieces. Carlette is most proud of being a devoted mother, and her greatest desire in life is to reach the hearts of those that are hopeless. And lastly, we have Jim Mollosky. Jim is a certified athletic trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and a licensed massage therapist. He's worked in sports medicine for over 28 years, working with athletes and clients of all ages and athletic endeavors. 13 of those years were with the University of Buffalo, worked primarily with the men's basketball and rowing teams. He's an avid runner and particularly runs trails and ultramarathons. Jim has a huge passion for running and endurance sports in general, and has honed his craft, specializing in the care and treatment of those involved utilizing the skills of movement and gait analysis. Along with a proper history and listening, he then guides each person to properly care for soft tissue work mobility work, and strength and conditioning to allow them to meet their goals both physically and mentally. One of his greatest accomplishments is running the Grand Canyon rim to rim to rim.
Oof. Mm.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Good times, yeah.
So I wanted to start off basically with a question for everyone here, and anyone can jump in to start off. So as you know, many people this time of year set goals, of course, what they call them resolutions or intentions, but we know also that they don't always achieve them. So why do you think that is, and what are some of the things that people can do to try to succeed with their goals?
Mhm. Well, in my opinion, I would say oftentimes there's a few reasons why people don't continue in their goal setting, and also that they don't keep the momentum. So one of those things is that there's not a system in place, right, to continue the goal. And so what I mean by that, so if your goal is to lose weight, then what system do you have in place to actually work out, or to meal prep, or to prepare whatever it is that you need to do, right, in order to get you to that goal? Additionally, the reason why, right, we've set a goal. It has a lot to do with whether or not we finish. And so oftentimes the reason why we're setting this resolution or whatever it may be, it could be connected to a trend, right? It could be connected just because it's the first of the year. And so the reason is not deeply rooted enough to be able to continue. And so those are a couple of things that I've seen consistently over the years.
I agree. I think, goals are important because that's how we succeed, and helps us progress through life from a very early age. We have to get through first grade and then through high school. And then as we become adults, it's kind of like more up to us to determine what our goals are. And I think that it also depends on where the motivation is coming from. Is it externally? Are we motivated by, external expectations of ourselves, or is it really coming from an internal place where there's a real desire to make the change? And so I think that really keeps us from we have really good intentions about it because we think we should be doing it, but is it really what we would like to do at the moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both that's been said. A lot of times people set that goal and then there's no steps in between. They just have the goal and they forget, like was mentioned, like meal preps, anything, and then just forget about the small steps that are needed to be taken to achieve that goal. So that whole thought process sometimes is just, okay, there's the goal. Okay, I'm just going to get there with the no path. So I'm just going to keep wandering in any direction I want. And then sometimes if you can break that down and make those mini goals, that'll help a lot along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's please go ahead.
I was just going to add one more thing. Is that I think it's really important to really get clear about why you have picked that goal. Because, it's just so easy to say, I'm going to lose weight this year, but, really kind of have a conversation with yourself about, why is it that you want to do that, and connect yourself with those thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of you worked with anyone individually around that, setting those, as you call them, Jim, mini goals or steps?
Yeah, I'm currently working with a triathlete right now who had a hip issue, went through surgery and everything, and he's doing really well. But it's like, so even though we have a race goal down the road come summer, it's just finding those little moments, those goals that I can say, hey, this was a great day. Guess what? We ran a mile today in a row. These are the many steps that we have to look at. So it's changing that mindset to get you on that path.
Mm-hmm.
So, Carlette, I want to ask you, of course, I know you personally as well, and I've seen your work. I follow you on Facebook and a lot of different things that you do. And you really have a kind of a faith-based approach to a lot of the work that you do as well.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you incorporate, as we say, a faith-based approach into your coaching work to create, like you say, that masterpiece mindset?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as you read my bio and you just mentioned, my primary premise behind everything that I do is to really help individuals achieve a mindset and to believe that they are masterpieces. And so it's all about perspective. It's all about a mindset shift. And so I empower the individuals that I work with, whether it's individual coaching clients or organizations, to really become unstuck by disrupting the old mindsets. And a lot of that has been faith-based approach for me in my own experiences, because my own perspectives and my own thought processes about my struggles and my challenges, even my goals, just did not serve me well. And so when I really got to the point in my life and realized, there's a different way to do this. It was only when I began to develop my Christian, belief system that I was able to accomplish and become whole and to heal in areas that have been broken for so many years. And so that is the reason why I push, anyone that I work with to be able to believe actually what they want to accomplish and that they have the ability inside of them to actually do it. And that comes from faith.
So we have a question from the audience. And remember, if you do have a question, please type it into the comments box and we will follow up. The question is it easier to achieve your goals if you have a support system than if you're trying to motivate yourself? So I want to throw this out to everyone, but I want to start with Jim, because Jim, you really do focus a lot on the physical. And we hear people wanting these physical, say, what the exercise goals or even like weight loss goals. We know that having a support system, does that help, or do you need to have that intrinsic motivation, as we call it?
I do believe there should be more of an intrinsic focus to that, like we mentioned in the opening segment, of that sort of like why we're doing it. What's the goal? Is it just to have a medal, or is there something deeper to you of why you're doing this run? Maybe it's a long-term fitness goal, or, even internally, maybe you have someone you've lost or you've dealt with an issue, and that's your internal intrinsic goal, your motivation to help you along that process.
What about anybody else?
Yeah, I completely agree with what Jim has said. I believe the challenge with having a total dependency or even a large dependency on a support system is that support system can change, right? Their motivations can change, their schedules can change, their ideas about what they want to accomplish can change. And so that is honestly another reason why individuals don't often accomplish the goals that they set at the top of the year, because they have now become dependent on, an external motivator. And so I totally, completely agree that it is the intrinsic motivation that we need to be able to accomplish it. We need to understand the why, and we need to have a desire. We need to have a knowledge about how we're going to achieve it, understand and believe that we have the ability. And then there has to be a reinforcement system in place, right? So that when I don't feel like it, when I don't feel inspired, what's going to happen then, right? How do I continue to just move forward? And so those are the things that I would say about, an external support system.
What do you think, Sawrie?
Yeah, I agree. I think that, the internal motivation is the key. And then as far as the support system goes, I think having accountability is really huge when you are trying to accomplish a goal. So maybe, just keeping in mind as part of your support system, to really make sure you have, someone that you've shared your goal with that is just going to kind of help you along the way. Once we put it out there, once we share it, then that just gives us a little bit of extra motivation, that external motivation that we do sometimes need, along with that internal drive.
Yeah. So I guess in a way we're hearing it's sort of a combination of both, but bottom line, it truly does have to come from within to begin.
Absolutely.
So Jim, I want to follow up with you because, we talk about that physical aspect. And of course, as a training conditioning specialist, you really do help people overcome what I like to call their self-perceived physical limitations. Like you said, you're working with this triathlete. He's got this goal for the summer, just had surgery. So in terms of just understanding this concept that we know of mind over matter, which when you think about, especially endurance events like yourself that you've done, I'm sure you run these events and you get to the place where you see yourself, okay, I gotta push through and it's up here. So how can a person develop or get into that mindset to kind of take Carlette's term? How do you get in that mindset to really develop and overcome some of those physical challenges?
Yeah, I think a lot of times it's like was just said, just one, putting your goal out there, putting out your intentions. And then that allows the training to guide itself. Some of these races the longer you go, the more it's easier to get in your head and you think about things, sometimes good, but then sometimes things can get a little dark at times, and it's how you manage it. I had a friend who would say, usually the longer you go in a race, the stuff's going to hit the fan. It's knowing that's going to happen. And then what if it does happen? How are you prepared? So it's preparing yourself for these journeys that you have, whether it's just, a walk in the park, these long ultra marathons that I do, or guiding someone else. It's like preparing people like, hey, things are good. We have these mini goals we're going to keep rolling along with. And if something does come up, not a big deal. We plan for it and we're ready to go. So it's just heeding those words and continuing along the process and keep continuing finding that path and rolling along with it, and then just sharing the journey with others.
Yeah, that's excellent. And I do want to say we have another question. Keep those questions coming, folks. So this one is, what if you can't complete your goal for reasons outside of your control? And we know that happens. How can you deal with that emotionally? Say you set a goal to, say, quit smoking. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit outside of something here that many people might try to do, and they just struggle. And I know that can be tied into an addiction, certainly. But in general, say it's a goal that you just can't seem to accomplish. How do you deal with that emotionally, Carlette?
Yeah, my first thought is to give yourself grace, because life happens. And so if there are things that have knocked on your door that are outside of your control, you need to be okay with that and accept it. Be kind to yourself. My advice would be to not quit, to revisit and to reestablish now a new plan, right? Because now life has shaken things up for you. And so now we have to approach it a little differently. And so what are the things that we can do that are going to be sort of side by side with whatever obstacle, whatever challenge has presented itself. And so that even if it's baby steps, right? Even if it's really small goals to actually help you achieve the larger goal. So yeah, definitely don't quit. And I would say, be kind to yourself and give yourself grace, and then reestablish a new process.
How about you, Sawrie?
Yeah. And, I think I looked at that question a little bit differently too. From out of, if something like sometimes things are out of our control, such as, maybe we physically just can't get up and do something that we need to do, or, maybe we want to go to school and, get a degree in something, but we financially aren't able to do that. So I think that in those cases, it's really trying to sort of shift your focus to what you can have an impact on, and, focus on that, as far as like, if you need to get healthier before you can go and do something else, take the steps to do that. If you need to, increase your finances or be able to support yourself, what can you do? Can you look for, other sources of income? Think about people that you could ask to support you. But I think in those particular cases, the main thing is just focus on things that are within your control, and then try to take actions towards those.
Yeah. How about you, Jim? Because we deal a lot with the physical, and then of course people with physical goals that you see in your practice that might have an injury or something happen that prevents them from doing something.
Yeah, this still, even my thought process will still go along that smoking line. So let's say if someone they're doing well for a while and then something just doesn't happen. My goal, whether it's physical training or helping them with some mental components, is to say, okay, let's track what you did well up to that point. Let's focus on that. Now that'll be our new starting point. So yes, you had this little speed bump here, but now let's look at all the good things that you just did. Let's work from there and learn from that. And so that way next time we can, build you up even more, and you have that new goal that is much higher plateau than you just made it to.
Now, Sawrie, you work with individual small business owners, and we know that certainly the last few years has been really challenging with the pandemic. keeping businesses open, keeping businesses running. So how do you do this work, and especially in your work with women, to, as you say, empower them and help them to develop that confidence that they can overcome whatever the challenge is to achieve their goals?
Yeah, well, my personal mission and purpose in my work is to inspire and empower individuals to believe in themselves and harness their own personal power, and then master their ability to create the positive and progressive changes in their lives. And although I do work with both men and women, I really do enjoy the opportunities to work with women because I am a woman, and shared experiences with women that are unique because of our gender. Perhaps opportunities that have not always been available, to me or to women. Sometimes not feeling as if, being as powerful as we would like to be just because of the external circumstances. So in my case, I've really had the opportunity, fortunately, to sort of work with that from a larger level to help with issues of pay equity, which truly impact women's ability to, be at their greatest potential. And then also about violence against women, things that also, would be obstacles to helping women to get to that place. But the good news is that women are able to do so many more things. We do have access to so many more opportunities. That is really good. However, as women, we have so many roles that we don't necessarily let go of in order to take on those responsibilities. The roles of being a good mother, a loving spouse, a caring daughter and friend, and lots of times in the caretaking role. And because of those external expectations, I think we tend to feel a lot of guilt if we can't do all of that. And then let's say we've taken on a career on top of all that to be able to do that well. So what I really enjoy doing is just working with women to help them. Also, women aren't really good at kind of like finding ourselves in the midst of others, and we sort of see ourselves often as our identity attached to so many others. And so what I like to do is just try to help women really get reconnected with that. I like to work with women to help them put the spotlight on themselves a little bit, not to feel guilty about that, but to understand that by doing that, they're going to be better for everyone and for their families. And so, that's where I really want to work one-on-one with women, help them kind of get reconnected with, who they were, who they are really, and, what sparked that joy in them, from a very early age until roles and responsibilities kind of take over our life, but reconnect with that and then find ways to incorporate it into our life, into their life, so that they can take some really specific actions, to become that again.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point about the fact that the roles that many women have in their lives, the multiple responsibilities, the juggling, and so forth, that pose challenges. And I appreciate the fact that you, and I'm sure Carlette, you as well, work with women to find ways to be creative, even with time and energy, and just the belief, as we're all hearing you all say, that it can be done. You can achieve your goals. So if you're just tuning in, I'm Carl Shallahorn from the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition. I'm joined by Sawrie Becker from SBB Life Coaching, Carlette Bradley from the Masteries Project, and certified athletic trainer and conditioning coach, Jim Mollosky. So remember, you can visit our website at letstalkstigma.org to take the pledge to end stigma. Also, if you're connected with a business, organization, or faith community, you could become an organizational member of the Anti-Stigma Coalition. You can find out more information on how to do this under our members tab on the website. If you have a question, please type it into the comment box. We will try to answer it. And we're having a great discussion so far, because I think the whole idea of goal setting and wellness is so important now, I'd say more than ever. I think we have so many competing things in our lives, whether, not to mention we were dealing with COVID and certainly just stressors and blizzards and all these things that just wreak havoc, basically. So the idea of cultivating mental wellness, which is really strengthening our resolve is really so important. So I want to get into this idea of setting wellness goals and how they can be challenging. But as I said before, like when you don't have an accountability partner, there's even could be sometimes a stigma around this. The partner, say one person in a relationship, say a committed relationship, wants to achieve a goal, whether it be a fitness goal, a weight loss goal, school, whatever the goal is, school, business, whatever. But the other partner isn't supportive, or as I said, even sabotaging that person's goal. How do you work with someone around that? And how do you encourage them, Carlette?
Yeah. So the first thing that comes to mind to me is the necessity of setting boundaries, right, for yourself and your accountability partner, whoever that may be. And when I say setting them for yourself, you have to make a choice and a conscious decision up front that even if there are some obstacles and challenges related to, this accountability relationship, that I'm going to continue. You also need to determine how much dependency you have on this accountability partner. It would be my recommendation that it's not, of course, total dependency, right? That they are just there to act as an external motivator that can, give you, some, momentum, or to encourage you, or to offer suggestions. But even if they don't, then you'll be okay with continuing in the process. And so, having some things in place mentally, I would say, but also, I'm a huge proponent of journaling. And so writing things down, right, will hold you accountable. Right. And so, when you've developed this relationship and you've written down what the boundaries are, what the expectations are, it will help you to continue to revisit that, because you're going to, potentially run into some hiccups. It just, life happens, people's priorities change. And so that would definitely be my recommendation around that.
What about you, Jim? You deal with athletes, of course, and I'm sure you may have encountered, I'm guessing you may have encountered some situations where you have a person that comes to you and has, say, an ambitious goal. They want to be an ultramarathoner. Takes a lot of time out of a person's life, but the other partner is saying, "What? You're going to run 3 hours this weekend? What are you doing?" So how do you help them do that?
I totally understand it. I mean, me being single, it's a lot easier. So my friends there have kids and spouses. I totally understand it. So it's getting back to that goal setting. So you had this goal, let's say a marathon down the road or something longer. It's trying to convey to your partner and set out the plan that you have ahead to say, hey, there's still going to be family time. There's still going to be you and I time. I'm just going to have to wake up at like 5 a.m. to get my running. So if you can, get the kids this, I have them the rest of the day. So that's what a lot of my friends will do, is it's just that give and take, and understand that, boy, if you miss a run or workout on one day, not a big deal, because the overall relationship that you have with your family or the friends will make up for that. So you don't have to feel as guilty. You've set that process along the way so that everyone's going to sort of feel a little better about it.
Yeah, that's very well said from a single person, I must say. What do you say, Sawrie?
Yeah, I was very impressed with that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that is a good way to do it. Again, kind of thinking about when you are setting that goal, and really thinking about, why you were setting it, and having maybe that conversation with your partner, or, whoever it is, to really talk about why it isn't so important, and then what the impact will be if it is a part of a larger unit or a larger family, the positive impact that it will have there as well. And I also just want to confirm with Carlette, I always agree with writing it down. Writing down your goal, get very specific about your goal, how it's going to make you feel when you've accomplished the goal, and visit that goal often, look at it, and keep it in front of you.
Nice. Well, listen, we have another couple of questions coming in from our viewers. The first one I want to ask is about the stigma that people might feel about spending money. And on whatever the effort might be. Of course, there's things you can do without money, but certainly many of the things that might require achieving the goal may cost something, whether it be paying for a pair of running shoes, or like Sawrie said, investment in education, or starting a business, whatever it be. So how do you overcome the stigma surrounding that as far as understanding and prioritizing and making it work? What do you think, Carlette?
So self-care is not selfish. Just put that out there. And we have to make ourselves a priority. There's a coach that I follow, and she always challenges her clients to think about whether or not they have put themselves on their calendar, right? Because we, have the propensity to pour and nurture and take care of others, right? Before we prioritize ourselves. But we cannot pour effectively from an empty vessel, right? Now, we try to do it all the time, right? We try to pour from empty, but we cannot do it effectively. We cannot help others at a advanced level. We can't take care of our children at the best ability. We can't do anything. It's just the reality of it. You have to take care of yourself. So I don't know if it's the co-payment for your therapy session, if it's a new pair of running shoes, if it's a new journal that you need, if it's, I don't know, going for a walk, whatever it is, right? Self-care is not selfish, and you're going to find that it's absolutely necessary, because that stigma, you have to discover, first of all, what is the root of it? If it's coming from you internally, or if you're hearing it from other people, right? Dig a little deeper, right? What is the root of people, thinking that you cannot spend the time, money, and effort on your physical and mental health, right? And I would bet if you dig a little deeper, that it's just opinion, whatever it is, right? It's just people's opinions, and we all have it, right? Let's just get to the point where we are okay with making ourselves a priority, because it's not selfish and it's absolutely necessary.
How about you, Sawrie?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you've heard that phrase, pay yourself first. When you're thinking about your financial resources. It's same exactly what you're saying. And, also the metaphor that's used about, in an airplane, when the oxygen thing comes down, you take from that first before you give to your child. And that just seems anti what we should do. We should always give but it's not, because if we are not healthy and strong, and able to, then we can't take care of who we need to take care of. And the other thing I want to say too is I agree with Carlette. If there's a stigma, it's really not about you. It's really about more of the whoever is sort of placing that constraint there, and they're what's going on with them.
Great. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of times you may notice, like, the more you listen, it could be the same person or the same group that is telling you these messages that are making you feel worse about anything. Hey, why aren't we going out tonight to grab a drink? Or why aren't we, let's go out to this place where we always, smoked, or, boy, you're going on that trip. Oh, I would never do that. It's then just, reevaluating things and then saying, maybe these people aren't the right ones that should be helping me along this journey. Maybe, I need a new group and find that way to move forward.
Good point.
We have another question. And this actually is a follow-up to what you were talking about, Carlette. You brought up the idea of self-care. And the person says, I'm very stressed in many aspects of my life. And we know that stress is all over the place in many people's lives. What are some simple self-care things that they can do to put into practice without adding too much time into the day and overwhelming themselves? Of course, we know that people want to do these things, but time is precious. And sometimes it's hard to add these things onto our plates. So what can you do that could be used in a way that's maybe efficient?
Yeah, I love the question, specifically said, about time, right? Not adding too much to the day, because time is our greatest asset, right? And so here's the thing, it doesn't have to take a lot of time, right? We can make sure that we are prioritizing what works for us, right? You have to know what it is that you need. And sometimes it's going to mean that you need to get up at 5, like Jim was saying earlier, right? Before the rest of the house wakes up. I know that's my story, right? If I don't have that 5 a.m. quiet time or prayer and meditation, you might not want to see me at 9 a.m. because I might be a different person. But I know for me, right, that's necessary for me. Sometimes it's a walk, even in the winter in Western New York, right, getting that fresh air into my lungs. It's things, and this, I don't overcomplicate it and thinking about the time, right? Sometimes because we've gotten so used to this hustle and bustle of life, right? We live in this culture that if you're not booked and busy, right, people look down upon you. And so sometimes it's necessary to challenge yourself around time. And so often I have to set a timer for 5 minutes. Otherwise, I know that I'm going to get distracted or try to multitask and do something else, right? But now I know that my timer is on. So I'm not going to move from this meditation place until I hear that ding, right? And it was just 5 minutes. But it helped me, right, to gather my thoughts. It helped me to come back to myself. It helped me to center myself. And so certainly one, right, discover what works for you. And then start with small increments, whatever that might be. And I'd say don't overcomplicate it with thinking about how much time it's going to take. You'd be surprised what little 5-minute increments can do really to help you to mitigate some of that stress.
And what would you say, Jim, about this question about self-care?
Yeah, self-care is key. Being a massage therapist, athletic trainer, you know, I hear a lot of stories throughout the day, it's a lot of physical work myself, but it's going back to like what was mentioned earlier, like, you know, having like a little journal, and then even I'll write. Sometimes the writing isn't great, but you just write, and then things pour out, you know, stuff I'm grateful for, stuff that wasn't great in the day, but at least I got it out in my system. And then even like, you know, writing down different quotes or different things that hit me throughout the day that, boy, that was a positive thing. You know, that really triggered me to happiness. And it's something I can always go back to on a bad day. You know, and again, it's that little bit of routine. So first thing I'll get in the morning, I have water right next to my bed. So I started my day hydrating myself with a nice, you know, little jug of water. And to me, that's the start. And then just at the end of the day, before I go to bed, it's either using like a Headspace app just to try to calm down if I need to, or just writing something down that was like, you know what was good today? And then that way I can go to bed in that mindset versus like, oh my gosh, this was so stressful. Just find that one nugget that works well.
What would you say, Sawrie?
Yeah, I think you all have said it so well. And I think maybe the other thing if you are feeling so stressed, is to take some time to kind of reassess your life and what is creating that stress. You know, where are the extra stressors coming from? And can you let go of some of those, prioritize some of those, and, you know, give yourself permission to do that. And again, try to alleviate those guilt feelings that seem to, you know, overwhelm us so often. But I think trying to let go of guilt feelings is a form of self-care.
Excellent. So once again, if you're just tuning in, we're here with Sawrie Becker from SBB Life Coaching, Carlette Bradley from the Masterpiece Project, and certified athletic trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist, Jim Mollosky. I'm going to ask a question for myself. I never do this in these, but this is one for me. And this is something, of course, you talk about new year, new you, intentions, whatever. So my thing is, and it really does tie into a lot of things we're talking about here, but it comes down to the word discipline. And we know that when you think about mental wellness or even physical wellness, there is a level of discipline that's necessary and required to achieve your goals. And we live in a world of distractions, so many distractions. And so I'm trying to learn ways to just be more disciplined. And it does have a lot to do with time, using good time management. So what are some tools that I could use, or maybe even people that are watching, to find maybe a level of discipline to achieve your goals?
Yeah, discipline and I are in an interesting relationship. So it's ongoing too. So there are so many things I could say about discipline, but I'll go back to the small increments that I mentioned earlier. For me, because I can, talk about me. So creating discipline in areas it happens only through the small increments for me. And so, the small habits I have to consider, oftentimes, to get away from the distractions, primarily, this device that we always have in our hand, right? I have to leave that in a entirely different room to be able to have focus and discipline on something I'm doing. The notifications are distracting. Even if I turn them off, I'm wondering why I haven't gotten any, but I turned them off. So, so it's, things like that. I have to get away and sort of distance myself from the things that are distracting me. And also have to be aware about what the distractions are, right? And so, for example, for me, oftentimes, if I'm being honest, right, too much TV can be a distraction for me. I'm just talking about me, right? And so I have to really create a schedule for myself, right? That I'm aware that Tuesdays and Thursdays, that's my TV night, right? Because I have a lot of responsibilities. I have a lot of things to accomplish, and so being an entrepreneur, all my other responsibilities is necessary for me to create schedule. And so that discipline, I have to create things that are visible for me. I'm a visible learner, right? I have whiteboards all over my house. And so I have these schedules up that I can visibly see to hold myself accountable so that I am disciplined enough to actually execute on what I need to do. So there's a lot of little, steps that I take, but they are very impactful, right? Because you have to do them consistently.
So a real quick follow-up question, and I want to get to Jim, because I think, Jim, you might have some ideas, especially talking about discipline. What do you think about using a planner? There's all these different kind of planners and journals, and you mentioned journals. What about using a planner where you really write down your schedule, but then you have something to follow up? And what do you think about that, Carlette?
Right. So if it works, for you, I prefer digital, versus actual tangible planner. I do journal, like chronically about everything, but my planner, where my schedule is digital, right? I have it on my phone, I have it on my laptop. And so that works for me, right? I need to be able to access it all the time. And so again, right, having self-awareness about what works for us. Everything is not for everyone. And so if you know what works for you, I think it's important that you are conscious of that and then make those things happen.
Okay, quick. I want to ask Jim real quick, and then we have a question from the audience, but I do want to hear your response, Jim.
Yeah, totally agree. And then it's also sometimes asking for the help. So even though you may feel comfortable with doing something, it's like, boy, I want to run, but maybe I need to hire a coach, or I need a life coach, or I'm working on my nutrition. Sure, I say I'm going to stop eating this or this, but having a licensed dietitian or a nutritionist to help you along that go back into that accountability phase, just saying like, just that extra person that you can share things with and be open and honest with when you have those little hiccups along the way.
So another question from the audience. This is one that's really important. Speaking of coaches, if a person was looking to get a life coach, what should they do to find one? And of course, we have Sawrie and Carlette who do this work. So I want to focus with both of you on this question. So Sawrie, how about you?
Yeah, it's a good question. There is a coaching association that you should go to, and there are, just so you know that anybody can call themselves a coach, right, Carlette? It's not regulated at this time, unfortunately, but there are definitely certifications that you should look for to find out if they have gone through coach-specific training and then become actually certified. And then I think the other, best advice is to, try to find someone recommendations, try to find someone else who has had a success with a life coach and go with that.
Yeah. And I would say after you've done that, then schedule that consultation, right? To even see if it's a good fit.
Right.
And so, asking very strategic and intentional questions, right, of the coach, making sure that you've planned those questions in advance, because it's like an interview,
Yeah.
You're interviewing them, right? And so you want to ask questions of them about their process, about their, success rate, about, their expectations, and things like that. And so, yeah, that was perfectly said. Mhm.
We have another question from the audience. This is interesting because we've been talking about goals, 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 goals. What about the idea of self-improvement if you're not into goal setting? Of course, we know those are two different things. So if you just want to improve your life, if you want to just live say a better version of you, as opposed to setting the maybe specific goals, what would you recommend for that?
Mhm.
Anybody can jump in on that one.
I mean, I would think, to really take some time to look at the aspects of your life, the different categories where you would like to make changes, and then identify, I mean, maybe, the word goal, but I think we've talked about I like the word intention, because it speaks to taking, to taking an action. But you do have to come up with something that you want to accomplish, obviously, to be able to get. But the main thing is that you're always moving positively and forward.
Mhm. Yes, always moving positively and forward, always having action steps,
Mhm.
and always measuring your success,
Mhm.
right? Because you want to be able to analyze what were the obstacles, how could you have done things differently. But if you're talking just about, self-improvement, as she mentioned, you want to assess where you are. What is it that you want to improve? How can
Mhm.
you do it, right? Ask yourself like 5 whys, like, why do I want to do this? Okay, when you get that answer, well, why is that, right? When you get that answer, then why is that, right? You'll begin to actually create sort of almost an entire process, unbeknownst to you, if you're asking yourself those particular questions. And so it really is about self-awareness. As I mentioned a couple times already, determining what works for you, right? And then taking those action steps to be able to achieve it. But at the end of the day, whether we call it goal setting or intentions, it really is around the action steps.
Mhm.
What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I also think it's important to be vulnerable, like not only
Mhm.
with others but to yourself, and just really, dig deep and just see, okay, what, I want to be better. How do I get better? How are my relationships? How is my day-to-day life? And start going back to the journaling, writing those things down, those little whys that you're having. But I think the more you can open up internally with your own self, then it'll allow you to be more vulnerable, to open up to others and find the right people to guide you along that self-care journey.
Mhm.
It's interesting you say it that way. I'm hearing you all say these things, and I'm almost considering it being an idea of taking, I would call it a self-assessment, which
Mhm.
does require knowing yourself and being brutally honest with yourself,
Mhm.
not pulling any punches,
Mhm.
but also looking at where you're at and saying, hey, this is where I'm at now,
Mhm.
and this is where I want to be, whether it be, and not necessarily, like I said, with goals, but this is how I see myself. This is how I like to see myself
Mhm.
physically, mentally, emotionally.
Right.
And that's I think could be really helpful just as a start.
Yeah, that emotional intelligence is critically important.
Mhm.
I would also recommend, seeking feedback from trusted advisors, right? Folks that you trust. And these are not individuals that are, going to tap dance around you, right? These are individuals that are going to be sometimes brutally honest with you and give you really some great feedback about, what they've seen, what they would recommend. But it's always necessary, certainly, to have a trusted advisor that you can also seek feedback. I intentionally said seek, right? Because you have to want it. I have to go after
Mhm.
it, ask questions. And so that's critically important to your development.
Can I just add also, I think sort of the role that fear plays in all of this. And sometimes if you don't want to set a goal, it might be why do you feel adverse to doing that? And a lot of times it is because it might force us to step out of our comfort zones. And of course, we know that until we do step out of that, we really can't have that breakthrough
Mhm.
and make that progress. So I think that's another thing for people to consider is what are you afraid of? And I like to work with people to get very specific and clear about what it is that's that triggers them in that area.
That's very interesting. That's a
Mhm.
really pretty profound answer. So thank you for that. All right, I think we have time for a group question, and then we're going to do some closing remarks from all of you. This one really has to do with Buffalo, West New York. We've been through 2022 was a horrific year.
Oh man.
And we even have, it's related to Damar Hamlin, and it seems like trauma after trauma after trauma we've experienced. How do you think audience members and people that might be watching this can develop resilience, build resilience to support wellness in the coming year?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the most important thing is to stay connected with a social support system. Make sure you have, whether it may be a faith community that you can stay connected with, your friends. But the main thing is to try to find a safe place where you can actually talk about what's happening. I think we feel often so powerless when we see things happening and watching things. And, are there ways that we can find a way to take an action, whether it be to join an organization where you can find out more information about, whatever might be happening? Or is there an event that you can attend where you can feel as if you are supporting or contributing to that? But it really is important, I think, to just try to stay connected in any way we can.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Jim?
Yeah, I think the same thing. One, it's staying connected, being involved, even going out of your comfort zone to, volunteer at a food bank or something like that. But then also trying not to get caught up in, what's the next bad thing going to be? It's trying to be like, okay, these bad things happened. We're Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
We rebounded as, the city of good neighbors and just found that silver lining. Now, how can we build on those silver linings and not forget what happened, but build on those good things so that way more positivity can be brought about through the communities?
And Carlette?
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said. I would add that it's important for us to, again, like self-check how you're feeling emotionally, how you're feeling spiritually, and do what's necessary to nurture, right, what it is that you need. If you don't know what's necessary, then seek assistance, right? Seek feedback. I also know that oftentimes it's necessary for us to pull back from so much information, right? It becomes overwhelming, whether that's the news, whether it's social media, whatever it is, right? Sometimes we need a break, right? We have to give ourselves a break because it's too much. And so do what's necessary after you have really checked in with yourself to say, you know what? How am I feeling? And sometimes it's subtle, right? You could be totally disrupted in how you're feeling, how you're able to flow, your mood or whatever it is. And all of a sudden you're like, why am I so moody? Or why am I angry? Or whatever the emotion is, right? And sort of dig a little deeper, say, why am I feeling like this? Right. And so do that self-check consistently, because the effects that the trauma can have on us can be detrimental if it's not right, if it's not handled, if it's not taken care of. And so I would just advise anyone just to make sure you're checking how you're feeling.
Thank you. And of course, along with all these, I think it's time to consider even professional help through therapy, counseling, if you need, say, that extra bit of help. We actually, I have a real quick question before we close out, and then we are going to get the last comments. Where are we right now with acceptance of life coaching by the general public and so forth? Just real quickly, let's just have Sawrie answer that. So you mentioned before about not being regulated. What would you think about life coaching in general?
Well, I think it's definitely becoming a lot more prevalent and I think acceptable. People are seeing it as a very valuable tool because it's really about going forward, not necessarily dwelling in the past, but really moving ahead and making progress. Unfortunately, I don't think the insurance companies at this point in time, and that is unfortunate because then that does create an obstacle for people to access life coaching, but hopefully that will, hopefully it will change as they see the positive impacts of it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So let's close out and have you give like a minute or so closing remarks. Jim, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Yeah. I just want to, let people know that it's okay to open up and talk about what's going on. It didn't hit me until like 5 years ago where I really felt comfortable talking to people with, depression that I work with and have gone through that I've kept quiet forever. So now I just feel a little more comfortable talking with friends about it. My trail community is just easy. It's almost like there's a little weight off your shoulders. You can breathe a little better, stand taller and stuff. So it's never too late to open up or seek help from the professionals. And then also, don't forget your little writing and journaling. Try to be, write anything you want down, but start writing each day. And then, but find the good things before you go to bed to make that better start for the next day.
Thank you. Carlette.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, first of all, for having me. This has been an amazing conversation. I think my final words to the audience would just to be around, give yourself grace. Be kind to yourself, right? If you are focusing on wellness strategies for the new year, which I hope you are, right? My recommendation for you is to do things that work for you, to be super intentional about making yourself a priority, right? About putting yourself on the calendar. Also, making sure that you have people around you that support you, that are deliberate about also giving you the necessary feedback that you need to grow. And that, whatever it is that you may be dealing with, it's not going to last forever. And I just want to encourage anyone that's watching, anyone that's listening, that, no matter what life throws at us, we all have the ability just to be resilient. So be encouraged.
Thank you. And Sawrie?
Yeah, I love this time of year, new opportunities. And as much as we want to look ahead and set our goals or intentions, I always think it's really important to take a few minutes to look back. Look back at the year and what you did do, what the accomplishments are. I usually write down what I'm going to do next year, and then I look back and see what I did. And, and it's really affirming, and it's really helpful because we can get so discouraged sometimes. So I really, do encourage you to do that. Also, just to remember to always try to connect your intentions with the feeling that you're going to have, because that's what's going to keep you going. Make sure you write those things down and focus on what is there. So oftentimes we are looking at what is not there. So, really try to shift your mind and focus on what is there. And finally, just try to remember that all you have is all you need.
I love that. All you have is all you need. Well, I've taken a lot out of this. Personally, this has been good for me. I don't know if anybody else is watching.
Me too.
Yeah.
And I'll say this too, that a lot of it is about accentuating the positive, focusing on the positive. It's so easy to, I think, in our world to, as we say, dwell in negative or look at ourselves in a negative light. There's so much positive in our mindset. I'll just say, using Carlette's title, it's all in the mindset. So if you focus, if you do this work, as we've been talking about, it's work. It's not easy,
right?
But it's so worth it, because when you begin to see the results from what you put into it, it's awesome. And that will give you the motivation to keep going. Once you start to see tangible results in your life, it starts to perpetuate itself. So I just want to remind our audience to take the pledge, please, to end stigma by going to our website at letstalkstigma.org. If your organization would like to join us, as I said before, there's information on the website as well. Just click on the members tab to find out how you can do that. Together, we can make this happen. And once again, I want to thank our panelists, Sawrie Becker, Carlette Bradley, and Jim Mollosky. I'd also like to thank our folks behind the scenes, Mike Telesco from Telesco Creative Group, for his technical support, Matt Smith, chair of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition Outreach Committee, Carol Doggett from the Mental Health Advocates of Western New York, and Karen Kershevsky from KKPR Buffalo for their support as well.
Mhm.
Join us on Wednesday, February 15th at noon here on Facebook, where we will be discussing the state of stigma, how stigma impacts caregivers. So on behalf of the Erie County Anti-Stigma Coalition, until next time, I'm Carl Shallahorn. Be safe and be well.
Thank you.
Mhm.